It is a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Robert Bruce McFarlane, all the way from Winnipeg, Canada, with Village Orthodontics. That's villageortho.ca. He's an American Board Certified Orthodontist with a large specialty practice in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, who travels and teaches for several orthodontic providers, including Henry Schein Orthodontics, Propel Orthodontics, and Invisalign. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. So, by the way, Winnipeg, I believe, is straight north of Phoenix. Am I correct?
A little bit east, Howard, as well, but we do have a direct flight. Lots of Canadians down in Phoenix, especially in the wintertime.
Well, actually, 10% of the homes in Phoenix, Arizona are owned by Canadians. 1 in every 10. And all the retirees tell me that when they drove here, that it was the most beautiful drive in the world. I mean, you leave Canada, you go through Montana or Idaho, Utah. They say that was the 1,000 coolest miles they've ever driven in life. But I want to say one thing. I was in Winnipeg. You guys built a $500 million human rights museum. And I walked in there. That was one of the neatest, coolest, probably most sacred thing I'd done in a long time. And so many of the stories you'd known about, you knew about the American Indian, slavery, the Civil War, the Holocaust. But there were so many other stories that that you didn't know. I mean, I felt like I could have stayed in there for so much. When did that open?
Right, just last year, Howard. In fact, when you were here, it was just brand new. So that was September, I believe, of 2015 that you were here. Yeah, and just opened, and it's a real jewel in Winnipeg's crown for sure. And then, of course, the other thing is the NHL coming back to Winnipeg, and we have the Jets now. Our Jets went to Phoenix, of course, and became the Coyotes, but now we've got an NHL team again, so we're on top of the world.
I don't want to tell you my first NHL hockey story because you might not like me being a Canadian. I was born and raised in Kansas. I'd never seen a hockey game or a lacrosse game. I'd never even heard it mentioned. And I got out of school in 87. Someone asked me to lecture up there in 90. And this guy introduced me as the Wayne Gretzky of dentistry. And I said, "Who's Wayne Gretzky?"
Oh.
And you could have heard a pin drop. And I'm like, dude, I've never seen a hockey game. I've never heard of Wayne Gretzky. But the coolest thing is after the seminar, the guy had great seats behind the box or whatever and went there. I got to see my first hockey game. And that was so fast and so fun. Football, it's you play for 10 seconds and you stand around for a minute. And the hockey just never stops. It was just crazy fun. And it's also probably the best hot dog in town. They have a very interesting hot dog. But hey, you are very, very influential, famous. You speak for Henry Schein Ortho, Propel Orthodontics, and Invisalign. I bet you 95% of everyone listening today has never even heard of Propel. So talk about. I've always thought that orthodontics and airplanes have the same thing in common. No matter how much they improve the airplane, it still only flies 500 miles. I mean, they make them wider, longer, bigger seats, whatever, but it still caps out at 550 miles an hour. And orthodontics, they have all these brackets and bands, and they have all these fancy inventions over the last 50 years, but at the end of the day, it's still 2 years long. But actually, that's starting to change, isn't it?
Right on, Howard. Great analogy, actually, and I think the airplane, it's the speed of sound that's pretty well, we can't go above, but except for the Concorde. But in orthodontics, we've actually gone beyond the speed of sound with orthodontic acceleration. And you're right, for the longest time, we worked on our mechanics. We got everything from nickel titanium wires, heat-activated wires, friction-free orthodontic systems, wonderful new plastics for our clear aligner setups. And all of the emphasis was on the devices. And we've kind of got to the end of that, just like the airplane. You're not much faster with what we have. So now we look within the human body, and now we're starting looking much, much more at how we can use our own biology to actually speed up the rate of tooth movement. And it's exciting.
Is it bleeding edge, maybe, or is it leading edge? Is it here now?
Got it. I've been on the bleeding edge, so I know where you are. For sure. We're very much on the leading edge with this. There was historically much more invasive ways of doing this. Most notably a corticotomy, where basically they flap people ear to ear and score the bone, and quite often do bone grafting while they're totally flapped. And
That was
it's so
a two brothers, wasn't it? One a periodontist, one an orthodontist. What were their names?
Wilco.
Yeah, Wilco brothers.
Wilco Brothers. So that was Wilco-Dontics, and it was kind of the granddaddy of these acceleration techniques, and extraordinarily effective, absolutely, but awfully invasive, Howard. And there's got to be some side effects to that. You're going to end up with some gingival recession, some sensitivity, all those sorts of things. So you trade that in the interest of speeding up your orthodontics. And we honestly don't think now that we have other techniques that it's quite as worth it these days.
So tell my viewers what Propel Orthodontics is. What is Propel?
Propel is the embodiment of micro-osteoperforation, which of course literally translated means little holes in the bone. And we take these devices and we, under anesthetic, we actually put dimples into people's bones on either side of roots that we want to move faster. And the big concept is that attracts cytokines. And those are the magic precursors to osteoblast and osteoclast. So basically we cause an injury that the body identifies and sends all these cells to the site to fix the injury. And while they're there, they move teeth approximately 2.3 times as fast as we would have been able to before.
I mean, that's amazing in of itself. Now, is this your common standard protocol? Is this something you charge extra for? Is this 1% of your practice? Is it 10% of your practice?
Okay, I'll take those one at a time, Howard. Very much become part of my armamentarium, mostly in adults, of course. Like kids, their cells are pretty active, and we don't necessarily have to do a whole lot of acceleration with a child. But adults, very much so. Many times it's their adults are more and more demanding these days, of course, and they want fantastic treatment, and they go, by the way, I want it as fast as is humanly possible. So that it has made it a real neat arrow in my quiver. I think of the bride who comes to me in January and says, I'm getting married in June and I need my teeth straight. What can we do? And sure enough, now we have an answer for her. You can charge a little extra. There's actually a fee code in the guide for this. It's considered like alveoplasty, and under the oral surgery part of most fee guides, there's actually a fee for it. So you can absolutely charge for it. We tend to charge for it if we think of it proactively, as in front of the treatment. Sometimes, though, I'll go to it, Howard, because I'm struggling or falling behind, and I just want to speed things up, and I'm aware of the economics of speeding up the treatment and not having the patient as long with me. So that in those cases, we don't charge. So I would say a very large percentage of my adults, both with braces and with clear aligners, we are absolutely using micro-osteoperforation with them.
And how much does this cost you per patient?
Right. So the devices themselves, there's a few different styles of them. There's sort of the hand-driven ones, and now it's come with a disposable tip, and they're in the early hundreds of dollars, like 100 and change, US dollars. And now we actually have a little handpiece device as well, where and it's actually a burr goes into it, and they're actually a little less expensive as well. And the handpiece is kind of like a slow speed, except it's got forward and reverse, and it's very closely governed to the right RPM so that we don't injure the bone. And that one they're just around $100 per burr. So.
And is that one burr per case, or can you use the?
Yeah, it's definitely considered a single-use device. And then, but of course, the handpiece and the handle, if you're using the manual system, is autoclavable and reusable.
It seems like that handpiece looks like the one that we use in endo
Right. Okay. Like for the
for the
auto
nighttime
files.
files. Yeah, for the files. Is it? I wonder if is it the same kind of the same? I wonder if it could be used for both.
Uh, I, I, this one has been really developed just for this, so, and it's very carefully. The fastest this thing will go is 45 RPM. So, and I think that's the key. When we're going in and out of people's bones, we really don't want to cause a whole lot of friction and heat. So I would be nervous about something that isn't governed like that it would go too fast and cause some damage.
So, what other technologies or inventions are making orthodontics go faster than the speed of sound?
Right. So there's also great, Howard.
You like that analogy, huh? That was a good one.
You're on tonight, man. The other sort of buzzword is vibration technology, and it's pretty exciting because we are actually using vibration through the teeth and into the orthodontic devices and the roots and the bones to also help things along with our orthodontic treatment. And there's been a couple of products in that space as well. One by a company called Extremism, which looks like this, and this one is it's rechargeable, and the patient pretty well just kind of bites on it for 20 minutes each night, and it helps to seat their aligners and unbind any arch wires and that sort of thing, and theoretically gets more blood flow to the teeth and causes things to go faster. And Propel themselves have their own vibration system as well. This one a little smaller and a little less expensive, and made to be worn for 5 minutes each night and a little higher frequency. So kind of cool.
So by vibrating for that, you said that one's 5 minutes. How long is the other one?
20 minutes.
So from vibrating, this ultrasonic vibrating your teeth, 5 to 20 minutes, that just loosens. What is the actual mechanism they theorize that makes osteoblasts and osteoclasts do their job faster?
Right. So I think the original thinking was that we would actually stimulate extra blood flow to the area, and therefore, of course, that would bring the cells along for the ride. What we've discovered is a lot of it is straight up aligner that with clear aligners, it seats them better, it makes them work better. And with arch wires, one of the big enemies of moving teeth with braces is friction. So it basically unbinds any wires that are trying to get stuck, and that helps. It also obtends pain a little bit. The day of an orthodontic adjustment, as you know, can be a rather nasty evening for some people. So it actually helps them feel better as well. So that's where we're at. The science in vibration isn't as compelling as it is with micro-osteoperforation. So, but I think it has its place. But I think that we have to be a little bit invasive in order for acceleration to work, but we don't have to be as invasive as a corticotomy.
Interesting. I would say that, since I came out of dental school in '87, most of the major brands, Colgate, Crest, Oral-B, whatever, were already there. But it seems like the biggest consumer brand in my lifetime, from Kansas to Kathmandu, was Invisalign. You can go to any country in the world, and the waitress finds out you're a dentist, will start asking you about Invisalign. It seems like the average Joe, Harry, Linda orthodontist will tell you it's about 20% of their practice. Is that what you see?
Yes, very much so, and it's expanding. Actually, we're now getting into much younger patients, teens, and even in the mixed dentition we're using Invisalign now too. So I've been one of their pioneers. I was way back when in '99 when it was just being developed, and I've watched it go from something where we can just do fairly minor things, close a little space, undo a little bit of crowding, to a device that I can almost look you in the eye, Howard, and say, I can do everything that I can do with braces with Invisalign.
Everything.
Or clear. Yes. Yeah.
So that really has come a long way.
It really has. And then you add in some of this acceleration technology, and it becomes that much better. So this is kind of the rocket fuel that we add to to our aligners.
So if the average orthodontist that you meet on the street tells you it's about 20%, what is that 20% sweet spot right now? Because there's so many mixed reads on markets, like little boys. You think, well, I wouldn't want to do Invisalign on a little boy because then you might have a compliance issue. I'd rather bracket him up myself so I don't have to worry about a 14-year-old boy that doesn't change his clothes if he's going to wear his aligners. I raised 4 boys. I mean, they would have worn the same shirt every day for a week if I let them, and then with the young girls, it seems like they're so enamored with different color rubber bands that it's almost like a fashion accessory. So is it mostly an adult thing where I'm 40, 50, and I don't want all my coworkers thinking I'm an ortho? Is that most of the Invisalign market adult ortho where I'm embarrassed, or how do you see it?
Yeah, no, I would say very much so, Howard. Most of our practices are, the average orthodontist, it's generally about 30% adults. And of those, the vast majority, at least in my practice, want something, inconspicuous and preferably removable. And so Invisalign, clear aligners has really fallen into that. But we're actually expanding the kinds of cases that we're doing with Invisalign. And so I think you'll see the percentages growing more and more as time goes on. And a lot of it is cases, adults that have relapsed too. So, they had braces as a kid, they didn't wear the retainers, their teeth have wandered, they want straight teeth again, but the last thing they want to do is wear braces again. That's a huge market.
What percent of it is it done by orthodontists versus general dentists in your country of Canada, in the United States, as opposed to around the world?
Okay, great question. I don't have the exact stats, but orthodontists, of course, do the vast majority of Invisalign. And around here, I would say it's about the 80-20 sort of thing. So
in Canada or in Canada, US?
Yeah, in Canada. In the US, it's maybe a little higher with general practitioners getting more and more involved in Invisalign. But up here, about 80% of the Invisalign cases are done by orthodontists, and about 20% by general dentists.
Do you find it ironic that Canadian orthodontists like hockey, which is the sport that knocks out the most teeth of any sport? Do you think that's should be in the Human Rights Museum in Winnipeg? All these orthodontists cheering on hockey players to knock out their patients' teeth.
That is ironic because we'd rather they stay in and crowd up. That we don't want to knock them out.
You know what I think is the most interesting thing about when I read about new technologies like Propel and Acceleradent and Invisalign? You know what I think? I always wonder, we research all that to fix the problem, but I'm more curious about, I wish there was more research to definitively explain why take every human skull found from 400 years ago to 2 million years back and there's no malocclusion. So what the hell? It seems like everybody wants to fix this disease faster, cheaper, better, easier, higher quality. But I don't see enough people standing around saying, wait a minute, how come 400 years ago there was none of this? And you hear that it's because they're not nursing babies. And then even when you see the baby, when they're nursing and that force on the face, spreading the arch, developing the arch. If the baby has any problem nursing, they stop nursing and give it a bottle with a sippy cup. There's just soft food. You see these mothers go to the store and they buy jars of food. It's just pureed mush, so there's no mandible action, there's no chewing. And you just imagine 400 years ago, they were probably nursing 2, 3, 4 years, and everything they were eating, they were probably chewing on for 5-10 minutes before they swallowed it. Do you wonder about that a lot?
I do, Howard. That's a fascinating question. 2 things that I think of. For one thing, those were fairly homogeneous populations. And in today's world, so many cultures are coming together and having children. So, for example, Caucasian mom, Asian dad, that child will I can pretty well guarantee they're going to have malocclusion, and it has to do with the shape of the teeth and the shape of the jaws and the sizes. So I think that's one thing. We're a much more heterogeneous population these days. The second one is that I honestly think, especially in adults, that a lot of this adult onset malocclusion is due to parafunction. Now I know people, chasing woolly mammoths were probably a little bit stressed, but pop them into the 21st century, and I think you're going to see a lot more parafunction. So this sort of relapse thing that we see a lot of, lower incisor crowding in adults, that sort of thing, in my opinion, very much related to parafunction. So those are two
So
things
the
that
first thing you said, what do you call that? And do you remember the old word for that? Miscegenation. It was M-I-S-C-E-G-N-A. My ortho instructor told me at a bar in UMKC that he called that mixed breeding, but he said it was something that you couldn't talk about because of all the racial and, you know, all historically, all you see is racism around the world. And he said it was something that nobody felt comfortable talking about, but it is absolutely true. This is Dentistry Uncensored, but the most amazing orthodontic case I ever did, the father played for the Arizona Cardinals football team. He was 6'6". I mean, he was just a monster. And his wife was, he was African-American. His wife was a little blonde 100-pound cheerleader. And by God, their daughter got his teeth and her jaws.
Wow.
And it was, you had to pull 4 wisdom teeth, 4 bicuspids, and then shorten all the teeth cosmetically. I mean, it was, but people just feel uncomfortable saying. I mean, look at Jay Leno. I mean, it's obvious. His one side of the family was probably a 6'4" German guy, and his mom probably was a 5 foot tall little Italian girl, and she got little Italian mom's upper jaw and big German daddy's lower jaw, and that's pretty much what you believe a lot of it is.
Honestly, I do, and I'm more of a scientist than a racist, honestly, but
Right.
I really do see that in my day-to-day practice, and so we're all about cultural diversity, and it makes for fascinating study too. I'm sure if someone really took this on and looked at it, how various obviously different cultures have different facial patterns, different tooth sizes, different tooth shapes, and try and fit them together in a couple that has had a baby, and sure enough.
So it's probably not binomial, yes, no, left, right. It's probably lots of variables. But again, it just seems like the first city that hit 1 million people was Rome. That was 2,000 years ago. And their skulls have like 1 part per 50, 1 to 50 part per million lead, which they built those lead aqueducts. So, they had massive lead poisoning, and that probably had a lot of neurotoxicity. It's one of the things contributing to their demise. But again, you just don't see the malocclusions. I mean, it basically just pops up about 400 years ago. So you would think in the Roman Empire, where they had people from all of North Africa, the Fertile Crescent, the Middle East, Europe, and you still don't see those malocclusions.
Interesting.
But it's but I think there's more to be said. But because now it seems like the market's all into natural and preventing. It seems like the millennials will probably be more interested in preventing orthodontics than treating orthodontics. It seems like our generation was just assembly line, mass production. It seems like the millennials are all about, they'd rather prevent a disease, whereas my dad would want to smoke a pack a day, and then when he gets lung cancer, take a pill. Whereas the millennials, would rather just not smoke and not get lung cancer. But yeah, but it'll be interesting how that unwinds. So tell, I want to ask you, this is Dentistry Uncensored. I want to ask you a very controversial question, and I'll just be straight out with it. When you go to the dental schools in the United States and Canada, they teach you, and there's 9 specialties. They teach you endo and perio and pedo and this and that. But you go to almost every school, and they still don't teach orthodontics. You still won't find a single kid who graduated and did an ortho case, a rapid palatal expander, an Invisalign. And you look at their ortho curriculum, and it's mostly theoretical bone growth and development. And it just seems like that pediatric dentists love to help you learn how to do a chrome steel crown. Any oral surgeon will say, "Oh, come by my office. I'll show you how I pull any tooth." Because they just know that it takes, there's rural doctors, there's urban, and there's enough to go around. But it seems like a lot of dentists say that if they don't want to do an Invisalign because they think when they went to the study club, they'd get snared out by their orthodontists. Do you think the orthodontists are more tribal than the endodontists and the oral surgeons and the periodontists and the pediatric dentists?
How would I do? And
I can't,
sorry,
I can't believe
it's
you answered that. Do
no,
you realize you
honest.
just answered that on the record?
Just a Canadian, kind of honest, but I think you're right. Of all the disciplines, ortho has been so much more. The orthodontic specialty has been so much more sort of protective. But I think part of it is it's not something that really works well if you just dabble in it. Meaning that if a general practitioner kind of wants to do a little bit of it on the side, they're going to be asking for trouble. Whereas if you want to do a little endo, like you want to do central incisors, but refer, the third molars or something like that, or if you want to maybe do an easy implant here and there, but ortho can go sideways pretty quick. And so I think there is some merit to having some caution about general practitioners getting into orthodontics. But the other side of it is, yes, it is legal and it is within their scope of practice. And I do honestly teach orthodontics to some general practitioners, and I think it's appropriate that a guy like me is at the helm rather than, a GP who has learned on the streets and.
So you teach general practitioners?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of certifications for Invisalign for general dentists, and also some of the work I do with Henry Schein is.
Well, when do we get the sacred course from you on Dental Town? We put up 350 online CE courses on Dental Town. We got 250,000 dentists on Dental Town, and 50,000 have downloaded the app. We put 350 courses on there, and they've been viewed over 600,000 times.
Wow.
Do you think we could ever get one from you?
Yes, you're about to, actually, Howard.
Really?
And it's going to be on Orthodontic Acceleration, so that's coming up. And anything else you'd like me to talk about, I'm all yours, man.
I want to answer another thing. The human condition, there's a lot of extremism. Like even when you talk about racism, it's almost like the animal is tribal. I mean, you see it with lions where a female lion loses her pride and she tries to enter another pride and they kill her. Chimpanzees do it, orangutans do it. But when you go into with any tribe, like if you go into religion, like 20% of the people think the end of the world will be in their lifetime. I got an MBA degree. 20% of the economists at Arizona State University thought the stock market's going to crash. There's just this 20% extremist doom and gloom. There's a lot of general dentists who won't refer to an orthodontist if he does 4 bicuspid extraction, and they just say, no, that's bad. You're going to dish the face. He's going to try to straighten the teeth and make her look ugly. It's obviously extremism. I mean, if you believe there's no case for a 4 bicuspid extraction, your mom probably dropped you when you were little and never told you. But would you discuss the extremism? Because probably 20% of your viewers have gone to an ortho course taught by a dentist in the back of a Holiday Inn. I don't want to mention any names because Witzig passed away, and I don't want to be sad to him. But there's just a lot of my homies in their heart believe that there's no indication for 4 by. Do you agree with that or disagree with that?
Okay, thank you, Howard. And it's out there for sure. My take on it is you gotta look at every case individually. There are cases out there where there's just far too much tooth material for that particular bone structure. There's just no question about it. A classic example is someone who is bimaxillary protrusive and crowded, and there's just nothing else that we could distalize or try our darndest. But in the interest of facial harmony, lip competence, facial height, all those sorts of things, absolutely there's cases out there that require extraction. So whenever I hear the words never or always, right away my spider senses tingle. And I would say to you in general, the pendulum has swung much more towards non-extraction. And of course, some of our devices have helped us be able to deliver that through more efficient expansion and proclination of teeth. However, there's still cases that should be extracted. And if you don't, I think it's incorrect. So those who say never or won't send to an orthodontist, if you send to an orthodontist and extract in every single case, then I think that person is probably not, in tune with the latest trends as well.
Well, you said that you agreed that about 20% of the ortho cases done by orthodontists are Invisalign. What
Yes.
percent do you think is the normal healthy amount of 4 bicuspid extraction among the normal American Canadian or orthodontist?
Good one. I would say probably about 10% should have some sort of extraction, not necessarily always premolars. Sometimes, in certain cases, we'll take a lower incisor. Sometimes it's periodontal too. Like if you know there's a tooth that's just way out there and it's got like nothing for periodontal attachment. If you actually save that tooth and try and line it up, you're sentencing that patient to a long-term perio problem as well. So those sorts of things, when I hear people say never for extractions, I don't agree. But we do look at each case on an individual basis, and we look at much more than just how crowded they are. Or we start from the face now. That's a real big trend in orthodontics, is looking at the soft tissue before we look at the hard tissue. We always started with a Ceph, and now we actually look at people's faces a lot more.
Invisalign started the space, clear aligners. I mean, would you say they invented or pioneered that space, or not really?
Pretty well. They certainly brought it to the masses for sure. There was, before that, we were using clear aligners, but we were kind of old school about it, where we were, taking models, cutting the teeth off, resetting them in wax, and basically, I think Invisalign took that notion and technologized it so that it became virtual and put it into the space that it's at now.
I love your words, technologized. I haven't heard of that. I also have never heard of too much tooth material. That was that was pretty cool. But this is Dentistry Uncensored. I don't like to talk about anything that everybody agrees on. I always like to go right to what is the most stressful, cringeful. A lot of orthodontists are very upset with Invisalign because there's a company that doesn't use the orthodontist, Smile Direct Club, and now that's basically a B2C play where they send you impression material, you bite into it in your bathroom, kitchen sink, send it to them, and then Invisalign's going to make the trays. Is this noise? Is this real? Is this a threat? Is this just a media sensation? What do you make of all that?
Okay, it's here, and it's real. I am personally not in favor of it. There are those even in my little group. We have a group, the Pragmatic Orthodontic group, that are actually behind this. But I think what it's done is here's another eyes word coming. It has made it all about, it has appliancized it. It has made it about the aligners and not about anything else, like the diagnosis, the facial harmony, the physiologic limitations, the periodontium. It's just kind of like, here we go. Here's my impression. Get me some aligners, and you're gonna line up my social six, and I'm gonna be so happy. But it concerns me, Howard, honestly, and those of us that have dedicated our entire beings to this concept and this discipline, it's disappointing that but bound to happen. Look at the music industry. People download everything for free now, and I feel sad for someone who's dedicated their life to the creation of fantastic music, and someone can just take it. So the idea that someone can just order up a few aligners from an impression and a selfie on their cell phone doesn't sit well with me.
I want to ask you another. It'd be just a big B2C volume play where they're trying to make the aligners a commodity, and
Yes.
instead of a value-added play where I want a doctor who's an orthodontist to look at my little girl and tell me, I need to fix her up because if she doesn't look pretty, she'll never get married and make me a grandkid. And I think dentists do it all the time because you see them on their own advertising. Implants, $9.99. Okay, so what? You're just selling the titanium thing? It's just an implant? Why aren't you selling? I've been doing this for 20 years. I've placed over 10,000 implants. I am a diplomat and board certified. And you're either selling value added, trust me, I'm the man to fix your teeth, or you're selling this volume commodity, like, oh yeah, an implant. I mean, it's $9.99. I mean, who cares who places it? It could be the Tasmanian devil. It could be a ghost. Just $9.99. And dentists are doing that to this profession themselves by marketing price. It's a race to the bottom. And but I want to throw some other just common question. I'm just going to say 2 words, and I want you to explain to my homies what it is, what you think of it, because they always hear things they're not sure quite what they are. Inman aligner.
Okay, an Inman aligner is a modification of a kind of old style Holly retainer, but it's got a bunch of springs in it, and it's kind of just another take on something that we've done for a long time. But for me, in my world, I'm so much happier with clear aligners because they're so much easier to deal with and not as big a mouthful and not as complicated, not as easily broken and that sort of thing. So, just my bias though. There's a place for Inman aligners, absolutely.
I also want to ask you, when you go around the world, because Henry Schein, I believe, has headquarters in 56 countries. I don't know. Most dentists, if they haven't traveled, Patterson is basically a U.S.-Canadian play.
Yes.
And I'm only aware of Patterson in the United States and Canada. But god dang, I don't care if you lecture in Tasmania, Tanzania. It just doesn't matter where you are. Henry Schein's there. And they are really huge into orthodontics. Henry Schein Orthodontics, that's probably the largest player in orthodontics, is it not?
Yes, it is. And it's topical. I just got back from Barcelona at a Henry Schein meeting, and it's amazing. So what they've done, well, they bought ortho organizers in California and a few other smaller players. They've consolidated them in the United States, and then they have distributors all over the world. The largest one is Canada. Serum Ortho Organizers is part of the Henry Schein sort of supply group. And you're right, Howard. And I think they've done it well, meaning that they're not just the supplier. They're behind us all, and they're willing to innovate, and they're willing to educate as well. So I'm really proud to be part of the Henry Schein group, for sure.
That was my lead into the question. When you go around the world and you meet with orthodontists from Canada to Barcelona, Spain, are there differences in orthodontic thought, diagnosis, and treatment plan as you travel around the world? Or would you say it's very homogenous?
No, really not. And we in North America, we actually think that we're usually, the cat's meow when it comes to stuff. But man, I've seen some things from Spain. I've seen some things from Asia that, especially like in TADs, the temporary anchorage devices. The Asians are way ahead of us on the technology with them, and probably it's because of the types of malocclusions they have to deal with. Like the big class 3s and that sort of thing. Carrier is part of the Henry Schein group now, and his work with antero-posterior change with the Carrier motion device. All these things came from elsewhere, outside of North America. So it's funny. We always think that in North America we're it, but and that's why I love traveling, and I'm super open-minded when I travel and kind of pick up things from all over the world, and it's super exciting for me, Howard. I love what I do, and I'm an eternal student. I've been at it now, like I'm 92, I graduated, so and I'm still, learning every single day. So it's amazing.
Well, you, I cannot believe we're the same age. So are you on human growth hormone or steroids or testosterone? What illegal substance are you doing to look like?
I'm older than you. I'm actually older than you are, Howard. Yeah, but I'm frozen for half the year, so it's cryogenic.
You can't age when it's 30 below zero?
There you go.
So back to miscegenation. We were talking about racial diversities. Would you say Japan has the most class 3s as a percent of the population?
Right. So that area, Korea, Japan, those cultures, there's certainly a larger propensity. And my patient pool here, which is kind of Anglo mostly, maybe about 5%. They're much higher. They're in the 20 to 25%. And I think it's because of that necessity, they've come up with so many different ways to deal with it. So it's exciting.
And is one of the things I always get confused about orthodontics is like, I wouldn't want to go to the doctor and him say, Howard, we need to do something about that hair. I mean, you're bald. I mean, we need to get some rug on there, some hair transplant. Now I get it when he says, you're fat, you got high cholesterol. Those are medical terms. But I always get tongue twisted when I hear people say, well, the doctor said my daughter needs ortho, and I'm always thinking, okay, how much of this is cosmetic? How much of this is health? And when we're talking to a patient, help my homies with the verbiage. When does Megan need ortho so that she can be the prom queen? And when does she need ortho so that she can be healthy and live longer and not have disease? Where do you draw that line?
Great. Howard, that's a really, really good question. Around here, we start out with the function, the health, the periodontal health, the facial balance, the lip competence, the long-term outlook for their teeth, their temporomandibular joint health. And then we go, oh, by the way, we're going to get her like a red carpet ready smile as well. We have to fit the teeth together like that. So that's the way I approach it. We start out much more on the holistic health and long-term outlook for their teeth bent. And then we throw in the cosmetics near the end. I would say, though, you've asked for a percentage. Probably for what I do, we're generally in the 60% range for function, long-term health, periodontal health, facial balance, and about 40% aesthetics. And for the patient, it's pretty well the other way around. They come because their kid's got a cuspid hanging out, and it's funny, they only want one tooth straightened, of course, but usually that's because their midline is over here somewhere, and the canine just can't come down. So you have to be careful to explain them. By the way, we have to move everything back to the center, guide that tooth down. But they were hoping we would just be able to deal with that one tooth. So
I heard that I'm so old now that one of the hallmarks that we were taught in ortho is found no longer to be true. We were taught the BMW, the biological minimum width, and if those lower teeth weren't straight and had 1.5 millimeters of bone at the apex, there wouldn't be enough circulation, white blood cells to resist periodontal disease. And when you had paper thin bone between the lower incisors, they would be immunocompromised, less circulation, and be more prone to gum disease. And now some people say that's just not true. So is that true or false?
Really not, Howard. We get away with a fair bit, especially in the lower incisors, a lot of interproximal reduction. So we're actually reducing the interradicular width between teeth, and they're fine. So I think that one was a bit of an overstatement. Of course, we want to be conscious that each root has its own place in the bone, and it's surrounded by solid bone, and there's cancellous bone and cortical bone to protect it. But maybe I think that what you were taught, the BMW, was a little overstatement.
So true or false? The first blade pulls the hair out so the second blade can shave even closer. What about that one? That's what they were saying when I was in dental school. And now they're up to 4 blades.
Amazing.
But so Dentistry Uncensored, I want to throw the biggest car wreck at the orthodontic community that you always hear on the street, and that is TMJ. There's these if I talk to 100 endodontists from 100 countries, there'd be almost no variance in what they believed. They'd say, why does endo fail? Oh, you missed a canal, you get short. They're so consistent. And then you switch to TMJ, TMD, and psych religion. There's Hindus and Buddhists and Catholics and Scientologists. And it's the most controversial part of all of dentistry. It has more controversy than all the other areas of dentistry combined times 12. And a lot of them say, those orthodontists, they blow out all the canine guidance, the Curvis Fee, the Curver Wilson. They take normal kids with canine guidance, they leave them in this group function, and they're the ones causing all this TMJ, TMD. They don't know a thing about occlusion. How would you answer that?
Wow.
I mean, have you heard that? I mean, is this news to you?
Oh, yeah.
Or do you hear this too?
No, for sure.
Well, in Canada, they're too polite. So in Canada, they would never say that.
Thank you.
But in America, especially the Trump supporters.
Yes. I have run into the TMJ evangelists, and
I love that TMJ evangelist. That is well put.
and some of them have been radicalized as well. My approach is, I think the big issue with TMJ problems is it's so multifactorial. Everything from our own psyche and the way we deal with stress and parafunction, and the way we're built, the history of trauma, both micro and macro trauma, diseases that can actually cause changes within the jaw joints themselves. So it's kind of, for someone to come up to me and say, well, you didn't get a perfect cuspid rise out of this orthodontic case, and therefore you caused their temporomandibular disorder, I would have trouble accepting that I've put a cause and effect to that. My thing is, we know that enough of the temporomandibular joint problems are occlusally related, so that if we are actually correcting their occlusion anyway, let's be pretty darn joint friendly about it. And the other big thing, of course, in orthodontics these days is be airway friendly about it too. So not only are we conscious of how the joints are dancing to the tune of the teeth, we're also conscious of how we're affecting people's airway, and that one is pretty serious long term as well. So we're now focused much more on joint friendly and airway friendly orthodontics, and that usually means not, dishing people back like we described with the extractions, and just being really careful about our finishes, getting the best occlusion possible, and at least eliminating the occlusion as a possible etiology for their temporomandibular disorder.
I want to tell you another thing. Like I say, my job is to ask the questions that I think my homies are thinking while they're driving. The reason podcasts are successful is because most of these people have an hour commute. That's about 85% of our listeners. And the other 15%, they have an exercise thing, like an hour on the treadmill, or they, I have a lot of people that say, like on Saturday, it takes them 4 hours to clean their house and all that, so they listen like 4 back to back. But I know what a lot of these people think, because I've had lunch and dinner and breakfast with so many dentists. But a lot of them say, the reason they recommend ortho for TMJ is because when I straighten my arm, my elbow determines where my hand is. When I straighten my leg, my knee determines where my foot is. And that the mouth is the only joint where the teeth come together and then the joint's left over. And a lot of my friends, their go-to problem is when someone's got TMJ, they say, you know what, just go get ortho, get everything unwind, and he's going to try to match your joint closing to your teeth coming together. Do you think that is a, what do you think of that theory? I mean, I could name you 100 dentists that's their go-to argument for TMJ every time, is just send it to the orthodontist and try to get the joint and the teeth to go together.
Howard, that's been my clinical experience. And I think the big problem is, research-wise, it's so hard to put a cause and effect to that, because there's so many other factors that affect our jaws and joints, as I mentioned. So the answer is, we see it every day, where people are, especially the deep bites, like class 2 div 2s, where they're totally trapped, and they've got all of this tension, and just the act of proclining their upper incisors, that you can almost feel the mandible having a sigh of relief, and it just intuitively know that that's going to help. There's no question about that. And then we want to finish them to the best occlusion we can, and in a lot of cases in my practice, except for the people that have real rheumatoid arthritis or some other crazy myofascial problem, we see a lot of relief just from making their teeth fit together better.
But sometimes the research doesn't back our intuition. Like, I still believe 80% of all general dentists believe that impacted wisdom teeth are causing the lower anterior crown. I mean, you just see it, it makes so much sense. You see them on the panel, they're pushing these books, they're collapsing up front. But then there's these research evangelists who say that it ain't so. So how do you weigh on that? Are impacted wisdom teeth laying on their side causing mandibular crowding, or is it just not so?
Right. So, Howard, the answer is they've looked at a lot of people who don't have wisdom teeth, and they still get lower incisor crowding, adult onset lower incisor crowding. So I think it's kind of a backwards thing where they've been able to unable to put a cause and effect relationship. To you and I, it makes so much. It's like, you know, bowling pins, right? Or dominoes. It makes so much sense. But I think in general, the issue with late onset crowding is the mesial migration of teeth, because that's the path of least resistance for nature to go, and parafunction. Those are the two things. Wisdom teeth, we let patients tell us that, because then you know, they say, yeah, my wisdom teeth came in and pushed my teeth around. I'm not going to sit there and argue with them that we've been unable to scientifically prove that. But I
think what you said about TMD was so spot on, that the reason TMD is so controversial is because it is so multifactorial. At the end of the day, extracting a tooth or doing a root canal is probably a lot more easier to figure out than TMD. It's kind of like tax code. Like, you always see these simpletons whine that the U.S. tax code is so big. It's like, dude, if it was simple, it wouldn't be fair. And if it was fair, it ain't going to be simple. So if you got 1/3 of a billion people and you want a tax code, you know, if you just think it's going to be a one-pager and say how much did you make times a percent here, that is going to be, you know. But anyway, I want to ask you another thing. I hear a lot of dentists saying, and again, they're drinking at a bar. Okay. But they say that Invisalign's a brand name, ClearCorrect's just a brand name. Same thing. Same thing. Would you say that ClearCorrect is just a generic Invisalign, or do you think there are differences?
There are differences, absolutely. ClearCorrect has a different plastic, for one thing. Their software, where we're actually looking at the case and planning it, is much less sort of detailed and less sophisticated. But I do think there is a place, you know, in the market for that. They're a little less expensive, and they are indeed an offshoot of Invisalign. For the kind of detail, though, that I want, and the predictability and the research and the sort of dedication that a clear aligner company has put into orthodontics, I'm with Invisalign for that reason.
And have you ever gone down to they got a big plant in Costa Rica. Have you been there?
Down there? I've been twice, yes, and I'm on my way down in January again. I love it there.
Well, tell them that you think I should go visit. I've never seen it. I want to see it. I want to go down there and podcast some people down there, and also Glidewell has a big lab down there, and also it's one of the fastest growing retirement places for Canadians and Americans. And you've been down there twice?
Yes.
Did you see a lot of Canadians and Americans down there for retirement?
Lots. It's an amazing place. They don't have a military, so they spend all their money on healthcare and education and roads and that sort of thing. So
you mean so they're liberal socialist?
Well, I don't know.
Oh my God, Ryan, maybe we can't go. I'm an American. You have to spend all your money on M16s and bombs. You have to bomb your way to freedom.
Okay.
So what is it like being a Canadian? I mean, I always picture Canadians as like a college apartment where downstairs are all playing poker, getting drunk, smoking a bong the night before the test, while the Canadian's up in the loft just doing his homework, looking over the edge of the loft saying, damn, those people down there are crazy. I mean, you just look at America and say, what the hell went wrong with that country?
Wow. Okay. Personally, I love America, and I love so many things about America. When when they stand up at a sports game and they hold their hand over their heart when the Star Spangled Banner is being played, I think that's amazing. Canadians do have the advantage, though, of being from the outside looking in, and we do shake our heads sometimes. There's no question, Howard. The most recent presidential debate comes to mind, actually. But wish you well.
But you know, the one thing, I've lectured in 50 countries, and the one thing I have to remind Americans is that a lot of times Americans, they compare themselves to the most advanced civilizations I've ever laid eyes on are Australia. They only got 22 million. Canada, they only got, what, 30 million, 38?
35 million now, yes.
35 million. are the most advanced is probably Scandinavia. I mean, you're never going to beat Norway, Finland, Sweden. But there's more people in Arizona than there is in Sweden. And America, the confusion is that with 1/3 of a billion people, you have to compare us to China, 1.3 billion, India, 1.2 billion. Number 4 is Indonesia, 280 million. So when you compare us to all the countries that are 100 million or more, then we have the best healthcare and we're most civilized and we're doing great. But man, when you compare us with, Scandinavia or Australia or New Zealand or Canada, I mean, there's just a lot of people here is what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of people from a lot of different countries, and that's my excuse for America.
Okay.
Hey, I want to end on, you have an amazing last name. Tell them where Robert Bruce McFarlane, your brother is Seth McFarlane. You're the more handsome of the two. You were named Robert Bruce McFarlane. Who were you named after?
Thank you, Howard. I wish Seth was my brother. Robert the Bruce was the King of Scotland from 1290 to 1326, and he succeeded William Wallace, who was Braveheart. And he inherited quite a mess because the British were pressing from the south, and it ended up that Robert the Bruce, and a fairly ragtag army actually turned away the British at Stirling Castle, and he has become a absolute hero. And my parents thought I might amount to something, so they named me after him.
Robert the Bruce, 6th Lord of Annandale. That's amazing. And that movie, William Wallace, the star of that was actually, you think that crazy guy was an American, but he's actually an Australian.
Mel Gibson, yeah.
Mel Gibson. God dang, I'm glad he lives in Australia. That was one more crazy man. Isn't it amazing how many actors are batshit crazy, but they're the best actors, like Tom Cruise, Mel Gibson. I mean, there's just, who's the other one in Pulp Fiction? John Travolta.
Travolta.
Just some of the craziest people. I mean, it's hard for me to go to a Tom Cruise movie knowing Tom Cruise, but then 5 minutes into the movie, you forgot he's batshit crazy, and it's just one of the most. Mel Gibson's another one. I mean, my God, 5 minutes into his movie, you forget all about his drunk racist rants and all that stuff, and he's just a great actor, Patriot, all those deals. But hey, I want to tell you that it's seriously, bottom of my heart, it is very hard to get an orthodontist to post on Dental Town, to go on Dentistry Uncensored, to talk to general dentists. It's a tight club. I'm the owner of Orthotown, and I'm not allowed to go on my own website. You have to be a board certified orthodontist, and when I try to go there, they're just like, no, you're a general dentist. And so it is always an honor. I call orthodontists that talk to general dentists unicorns. Usually, they'll talk to you because they're always riding a unicorn, and they're holding the tooth fairy. So it's just a huge honor that someone as prestigious as you that lectures all around the world. From how many countries have you lectured in?
Well, mostly Canada and the United States, but I have been over to Spain and working on some new, especially Europe. I'm fascinated by what's happening there. They've got some cool ideas.
Well, what I'd like to remind American dentists that Americans economically are number one in military, medical, insurance, banking, finance, music, and movies. But they're not even in the top 3 in cars. I mean, Germany and Japan, their auto industry, no one around the world wants a Chevy or a Chrysler or a Pontiac. And it's the same thing in dentistry. There is so much more amazing stuff in Germany. I mean, think about it. Sirona, Ivoclar is Liechtenstein, but that's really, it used to be part of Germany. Some of that orthodontic stuff coming out of Taipei. I mean, there's just, we were in Tokyo and we talked to many orthodontists, and the world is so exciting, and the internet is making it just one little small village. And I think one of the reasons Dental Town and Orthotown is just a must read is that there's dentists chiming in from literally every single country on earth is on that website every single day. And this podcast that you just talked to is downloaded in 150 countries. So King Robert de Bruce McFarlane, son of Seth MacFarlane III, are you a jazz player too, like Seth MacFarlane?
I wish. I'm classic rock guy.
Did you know Seth MacFarlane has the #1 jazz album now?
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Isn't that a guy? I mean, it starts off as Family Guy, then he does Western movies, and he's got the #1 hit jazz album right now. That is a really talented guy. But hey, Bruce, seriously, thank you so much for giving me an hour of your life today and for coming on my show. And I cannot wait to see your course on Dental Town.
Awesome.
All right, buddy.
Pleasure, Howard.
All right,
Thanks, buddy.
bye-bye.